Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of New Haven Colony, watching the strange lights descend through the violet clouds of Kepler 186f. The settlement's first year had been challenging enough without unexpected visitors. Agricultural domes stretched across the valley below, their surfaces gleaming under the dim red dwarf star they now called their sun. 3 years of terraforming had transformed this small patch of alien world into humanity's first extrasolar home. The incoming ships were nothing like the clunky human vessels that had brought them here. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls shimmering with what appeared to be living metal. As colony chief scientist, Sarah should have been excited about first contact. Instead, her hand tightened around the data tablet containing 18 months of unusual sensor readings she kept to herself. They're requesting landing clearance, Colony Director Marcus Rodriguez announced over the comm system, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. All department heads to the command center immediately. Sarah hurried through the corridors of the administration building, passing colonists who had stopped their work to gather around viewport windows. Their faces showed a mixture of wonder and apprehension. Humanity had always questioned if they were alone in the universe. Today, they would finally have their answer. The command center was already crowded when she arrived. Marcus stood at the central display, his dark eyes fixed on the approaching vessels. Chief of Security Diana Walsh, a former UN peacekeeper, was quietly directing her teams to defensive positions. Just in case, Sarah noticed her old friend Dr. James Morrison, the colony's xenobiologist, practically vibrating with excitement. They call themselves the Meridian Collective, Marcus announced as Sarah took her place at the conference table. Their message was sent in perfect English, which should have been impossible. They claim to be peaceful explorers who've been watching our progress with great interest. Too great an interest, Sarah muttered, pulling up her sensor data. Director, those energy signatures I've been tracking. They matched these ships exactly. They'd been here since before we arrived, watching us, hiding in the planet's magnetic field. Diana's posture stiffened. Why are they revealing themselves now? Before anyone could respond, the ships landed in perfect formation around the colony's perimeter. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, their surfaces rippling like quicksilver. A delegation emerged from the lead vessel, their forms tall and elegant, covered in what appeared to be living armor that shifted colors with each movement. Through the command center's windows, Sarah watched as Marcus led a welcoming party to meet them. The aliens moved with fluid grace, their gestures almost hypnotic. Everything about them seemed designed to put humans at ease. Too perfect, too practiced. That's when Sarah noticed the pattern. The ships hadn't landed randomly. They formed a perfect circle around New Haven's key infrastructure: power plant, water reclamation, communications array. Her fingers flew across her console, analyzing their positioning. Director, she tried to warn through the comm, but only static answered. The attack began without warning. The beautiful ships transformed, their liquid metal surfaces sprouting weapons that had been perfectly concealed. Energy beams sliced through the colony's defensive shields like they weren't there. The aliens' elegant forms shifted too, their living armor becoming battle suits that moved with lethal precision. All colonists to emergency stations. Diana's voice boomed through the remaining functional speakers. This is not a drill. Security teams, defensive positions Alpha through Delta. Engineering, initiate core shutdown. Sarah was already moving, her mind racing ahead to the secret project she'd been working on since detecting those first anomalous readings. In her private lab, behind 3 layers of security, sat a device that might save them all, if she could reach it in time. James with me, she shouted to her fellow scientist as they evacuated the command center. Remember that theoretical paper we wrote about using the planet's magnetic field to generate a defensive shield? His eyes widened. The one that got rejected for being impossible. Sarah, you didn't. I did, and now we're going to test it. They sprinted through chaos-filled corridors as explosions rocked the colony. Colonial militia fought back with conventional weapons, but they might as well have been throwing stones for all the good it did against the aliens' advanced technology. They reached her lab just as a section of ceiling collapsed behind them. Inside, Sarah's prototype hummed quietly, a mess of cobbled-together equipment that drew on the planet's powerful magnetic field. It wasn't elegant like alien technology. It was human technology, improvised, innovative, and just crazy enough to work. They studied us, learned everything about our conventional defenses, Sarah explained as she initiated the startup sequence. But they don't know about this. They couldn't, because until this moment, I wasn't even sure it would work. James helped her adjust the field harmonics as the battle raged outside. If this works, it'll fry every piece of their fancy technology within range. Sarah nodded grimly. And if it doesn't, well, humanity's first extrasolar colony may be its last. But I don't intend to let that happen. She entered the final command sequence, her voice hard with determination. They want to see what humans are capable of. Let's show them. The device powered up with a deep thrum that resonated through the colony's foundations. Outside, the first alien ship was about to breach the main dome. Sarah took a deep breath and pressed the activation key. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity wouldn't go quietly into the night. Not now, not ever. The magnetic pulse rippled outward from Sarah's device like an invisible tsunami. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the air filled with an otherworldly screech as the Meridian ship's living metal surfaces began to crystallize, their fluid movements stuttering to a halt. The elegant armor of the alien ground forces turned rigid, trapping many of them mid-stride. But Sarah knew the victory would be short-lived. We have maybe 10 minutes before their systems adapt. She shouted to James over the emergency klaxons. Their technology is partially organic. It'll heal itself. Diana Walsh burst into the lab, her security uniform scorched and torn. Whatever you just did bought us some breathing room, but we got bigger problems. Their ships are positioned directly over our geothermal taps. If those get destroyed, we lose power, heat, everything. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. The Meridians had clearly studied human military tactics and defensive capabilities, but they hadn't accounted for something else: human adaptability. Her eyes fell on the mining equipment stored in the adjacent engineering bay. "The drilling rigs," she said suddenly. "The ones we use to tap the geothermal vents. They're hardened against magnetic interference because of the planet's field. They'll still work." Diana caught on immediately. "And they're designed to cut through rock harder than any metal we've encountered. You think they'll work against their ships? Only one way to find out." Sarah was already moving, calling up schematics on her tablet. "James, get to the medical bay. They'll need help with the wounded. Diana, I need your people to buy us time." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Colony engineers, led by Sarah, modified the massive drilling vehicles, mounting them on mobile platforms. The drills had been designed to bite through the planet's super-dense crust. The crystallized alien metal, for all its advancement, was soft in comparison. They worked frantically as the alien ships began to show signs of recovery, their surfaces slowly regaining their fluid nature. Sarah watched through a cracked viewport as the first drilling rig rolled out of the engineering bay, its massive bit already spinning up to speed. The colonists had trained on this equipment, spent months using it to build their home. Now they would use it to defend that home. "Target their ventral power nodes," Sarah instructed over the comm. "The energy readings are strongest there. Even if we can't destroy them completely, we can disable their ability to take off." The first drill struck home just as the alien ship was beginning to power up its weapons. The hardened titanium carbide bit, designed for the most punishing mining operations, shrieked against the living metal. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like tearing silk, the drill bit through. "It's working." The operator's voice crackled over the comm. "The metal's trying to heal itself, but it can't close fast enough against the drill." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The Meridians had expected humanity to fight back with guns, with missiles, with all the conventional weapons they'd studied. They hadn't expected humans to repurpose mining equipment into weapons. This was human ingenuity at its finest, taking tools designed to build and adapt them for survival. More drilling rigs rolled out, each targeting a different ship. The aliens responded with sporadic weapons fire, but their systems were still compromised from the magnetic pulse. Their shots went wide, their legendary precision shattered. In the command center, Sarah coordinated with Diana's security teams, directing the drilling rigs to the most vulnerable points on each ship. The colonial militia provided cover fire, keeping the recovering alien ground forces at bay. Every colonist who could still fight had a role to play. "They're retreating," someone shouted. Through the chaos, Sarah watched as the alien ground forces began to fall back to their damaged ships. The magnificent vessels, their living metal surfaces now scared and pitted, struggled to lift off with their compromised systems. But Sarah knew this wasn't over. She'd seen enough of their technology to know the Meridians would adapt, would come back stronger. This had only been the first round. "Diana," she called over the comm, "get me every scrap of alien tech you can salvage. Their weapons, armor, anything they left behind. And I need our best engineers. We've got work to do." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Sarah looked out over the colony. Sections of the dome were breached, buildings burned, and too many good people lay wounded or worse. But they had survived. More than that, they had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or defenses. It was the ability to adapt, to take the familiar and make it extraordinary. The Meridians would return, of that she was certain. But next time, humanity would be ready. They had learned a crucial lesson today. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the most advanced technology, but the intelligence and determination to use what you have in unexpected ways. As emergency teams began repairs and medical units tended the wounded, Sarah headed to her lab. The alien technology they'd recovered would tell them more about their enemy, and she had a feeling they'd need every advantage they could get for the battle to come. 3 days after the attack, Sarah's lab had become a maze of salvaged alien technology. Pieces of living metal writhed weakly on examination tables, their surfaces dulled but still attempting to repair themselves. Partially dismantled weapons lined the walls, their internal components exposed like technological organs. But it was the damaged alien command module that held her attention now. "This can't be right," she muttered, reviewing the data scrolling across her screen. James looked up from his own analysis station, where he'd been studying the biological components of the Meridian armor. "What did you find?" he asked, moving to peer over her shoulder. "These command protocols, they're based on human-computer architecture. Modified, advanced, but the core structure is unmistakably human in origin." Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, digging deeper into the alien system. "It's like they reverse-engineered our technology and evolved it over centuries, but kept the basic framework." Diana entered the lab, her face grim. "That tracks with what we found in their communication logs. The attack wasn't just about claiming our colony. They were terrified of us." "Terrified? Of us?" James scoffed. "They nearly wiped us out with their superior technology." "Technology they apparently based on ours," Sarah reminded him. "Diana, what exactly did you find?" The security chief pulled up a translated message on the main display. "According to this, the Meridians have been watching Earth for a long time. They saw how quickly we advanced, how rapidly we adapted to new challenges. They saw our potential trajectory and it scared them. This colony was just the first step. They knew if they didn't stop us now, they might not be able to later." Sarah sat back, her mind racing. "So they studied us, learned everything about us, even based their technological revolution on stolen human concepts. And still," she gestured at the damaged equipment around them, "still, they couldn't predict how we'd respond when cornered." A young engineer burst into the lab, interrupting their discussion. "Dr. Chen, We've got something in the wreckage of their largest ship. You need to see this." The discovery changed everything. In the twisted ruins of the Meridian vessel lay a chamber filled with stasis pods, each containing what appeared to be different evolutionary stages of the Meridian species. But it was the data crystals found alongside them that told the real story. "They're not natural," Sarah explained to the gathered colony leadership hours later. "The Meridians engineered themselves, modified their own bodies and minds to become what they thought was a perfect species. They built their entire civilization on the principle of controlled, calculated advancement." "Which explains their reaction to us," James added. "Human advancement is chaotic, unpredictable. We take leaps that don't follow their careful patterns." Marcus, still bearing burns from the initial attack, leaned forward. "How does this help us prepare for their return?" Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "Because now we know their weakness. The Meridians modified themselves for perfection, but they sacrificed something crucial: adaptability. Every response, every strategy they have is carefully planned and programmed. They don't know how to handle the unexpected. So we give them the unexpected," Diana said, catching on. "But they'll be ready for the mining rigs this time." "Yes, but that's not the real discovery." Sarah pulled up schematics of the stasis chamber technology. "This is their most closely guarded secret, the key to their supposed perfection. And it's built on the same principles as our own early suspended animation research. We don't just understand their technology. On some level, it's our technology." The implications hit the room like a physical force. The Meridians' greatest strength, their advanced technology, was built on human foundations. They had taken humanity's early achievements and refined them to near perfection, but in doing so, they had created systems that human engineers could understand and, potentially, manipulate. Sarah turned to Marcus. "Give me 2 weeks. We'll never match their level of technological advancement in that time. But we don't have to. We just need to remind them why stealing human innovation and trying to use it against us was their biggest mistake." As the others filed out to begin preparations, Sarah returned to her lab. On her main screen, the alien code continued to scroll, beautiful, elegant, and utterly predictable in its perfection. They had built an empire on stolen human ingenuity, never understanding that humanity's real strength lay not in any specific technology, but in its boundless capacity for adaptation and innovation. The Meridians would return, expecting to face a colony enhanced by their stolen technology. Instead, they would face something far more dangerous: humans who understood the foundations of Meridian technology and weren't afraid to break all the rules of perfect advancement. Sarah began to write new code, deliberately introducing controlled chaos into the elegant alien algorithms. Sometimes the best way to fight perfection was with imperfection, and humanity had turned imperfect solutions into an art form. The Meridian fleet appeared exactly 2 weeks after their first attack, just as Sarah had predicted. Their ships were different this time, larger, more heavily armored, with weapons clearly designed to counter the colonists' mining equipment. They emerged from hyperspace in attack formation, their living metal hulls rippling with barely contained energy. But New Haven Colony was ready. In the 2 weeks since the first attack, they had transformed their home into something the Meridians couldn't possibly have predicted. Sarah watched from the reinforced command center as the alien ships took up positions around the colony, their formation flawless and utterly predictable. "They're following the exact tactical pattern from their combat databases," Diana observed, studying the tactical display. "Just like you said they would." Sarah nodded, her fingers hovering over the control panel she'd built from salvaged Meridian technology. "They're perfect. That's their weakness." She keyed her comm. "All teams, execute Operation Chaos. Remember, don't think like soldiers. Think like humans." The colony's response began with apparent panic. Emergency lights flashed in random patterns. Defense turrets fired wildly, missing their targets by wide margins. Colonists ran in seemingly random directions, their movements lacking any military precision. To the Meridian's perfectly ordered minds, it must have looked like complete disarray. It was exactly what Sarah had planned. "They're moving in closer," Diana reported, taking the bait. The Meridian ships descended, their weapons powering up. They had expected the humans to try to copy their technology, to attempt to match their perfection. Instead, the colony's defenses appeared to be malfunctioning, breaking down under the pressure. It was too tempting a target to resist. "Now," Sarah commanded. The chaos transformed in an instant. The random defense turret fire suddenly converged on exact points in the Meridian ship's armor, points that Sarah had identified from their own technical data as structural weaknesses. The scattered colonists snapped into practiced formations, revealing that their apparently random movements had actually positioned them perfectly to activate the trap. But the real surprise came from the colony's power plant. Sarah had spent days modifying it based on her understanding of the stolen Meridian technology. As the alien ships committed to their attack run, she initiated her masterstroke. The power plant pulsed, sending out a signal that mimicked the Meridian's own command protocols. For a crucial moment, their living metal ships recognized the signal as coming from their own kind. Their adaptive systems opened to receive what they thought would be tactical updates. Instead, they received Sarah's chaos code. The effect was devastating. The living metal, programmed for perfect cooperation and synchronization, suddenly received contradictory commands. Weapons targeted phantom enemies. Navigation systems calculated impossible trajectories. The magnificent ships began to move erratically, their perfect formation dissolving into confusion. "Their biological components are rejecting the mechanical ones," Sarah explained, watching the sensors. "They engineered themselves and their technology to work in perfect harmony, but introduce enough uncertainty, enough chaos, and the whole system breaks down." James finished, understanding dawning on his face. The Meridian ground forces deployed, but they faced similar problems. Their living armor, exposed to the chaotic signals, began to malfunction. Some suits froze entirely, while others moved in unpredictable patterns that their perfectly engineered pilots couldn't control. "They're trying to adapt," Diana warned, noting changes in the enemy patterns, starting to isolate their systems from the signal. "Let them," Sarah said calmly. "Every adaptation they make has to be perfect, has to follow their rigid protocols. But we're not playing by their rules." She activated the second phase of her plan. Throughout the colony, jury-rigged transmitters began broadcasting variations of the chaos signal, each one slightly different, each one forcing the Meridians to adapt again and again. Their perfect systems, designed to evolve along predetermined paths, couldn't handle the constant, unpredictable changes. Colonial militia moved in, using conventional weapons alongside salvaged Meridian technology that had been deliberately modified to be imperfect, unpredictable. The aliens, used to fighting opponents who tried to match their precision, had no protocols for dealing with weapons that didn't behave as they should. "Message from their command ship," Diana announced. They're requesting parley." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Perfect." She turned to Marcus. "Director, I believe you'll want to handle this part. Just remember, they understand precision and perfection. Let's show them something different. Let's show them humanity." The battle wasn't over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The Meridians had built their civilization on stolen human ingenuity, perfected it, refined it into something beautiful and deadly. But in doing so, they had forgotten the most important aspect of human nature: our ability to embrace chaos, to find strength in imperfection, to turn disadvantages into advantages through sheer creative will. As the alien ships hung disabled above New Haven, Sarah began composing humanity's terms. The Meridians had sought to destroy humanity's first extrasolar colony. Instead, they were about to become part of humanity's first diplomatic victory among the stars. And perhaps, if they were willing to learn, she could teach them the value of imperfection. The negotiation chamber had once been New Haven's main hydroponics bay. Now, with its gardens damaged from battle, It served as neutral ground between humans and Meridians. Sarah watched as the alien delegation entered, their movements still graceful, but lacking the perfect synchronization she'd observed before. Their living armor showed signs of adaptation, patches where the metal had restructured itself chaotically rather than maintaining its usual perfect symmetry. The Meridian leader, who called herself First Sequential, stood before the Colonial Council. Her form was taller than the others, her living metal armor rippling with complex patterns that Sarah now recognized as a sign of emotional disturbance rather than tactical communication. "We have made an error in judgment," First Sequential announced, her translated voice carrying notes of confusion and what might have been awe. "Our studies of humanity led us to believe we understood you. We were wrong." Marcus stepped forward, still bearing the scars of the first attack. "You studied our technology, our military tactics, our defensive capabilities, but you never understood what makes us human. Your chaos," First Sequential agreed. "Your imperfection. We believed we had achieved superiority by perfecting what we learned from humanity's early technological achievements. Instead, we created a weakness within ourselves." Sarah couldn't help but speak up. "You engineered yourselves for perfection, but perfection is static. Life, real life, is adaptive, messy, creative. That's what you sacrificed when you tried to make everything perfect." The Meridian leader's armor shifted, displaying patterns Sarah had never seen before. "Our civilization has spent centuries evolving along carefully planned paths. Each change, each advancement, precisely calculated. Yet in mere weeks, your colony demonstrated more genuine innovation than we have achieved in generations. Because we're not afraid to fail," James added from his position near the biological samples. "Every human achievement came after countless failures. It's how we learn, how we grow." First Sequential moved closer to the salvaged Meridian technology that Sarah had modified. "You took our perfect systems and deliberately introduced flaws, made them unpredictable, made them better." The last word seemed to cause her physical distress, her armor rippling violently. "We made them human," Sarah corrected gently. "And in doing so, we showed you something your perfect simulations never could, that there's strength in embracing uncertainty, in allowing for chaos within order." The negotiations that followed would reshape both civilizations. The Meridians, shaken by their defeat, were forced to confront the limitations of their pursuit of perfection. In exchange for peace, they sought to learn from humanity, not just their technology this time, but their way of thinking, their ability to innovate through imperfection. New Haven Colony became more than just humanity's first extrasolar home. It transformed into a place of cultural exchange, where humans taught Meridians how to think creatively, while Meridians shared their advanced technology, now with a new appreciation for the value of imperfection. Sarah found herself working closely with Meridian scientists, showing them how to introduce controlled chaos into their systems, how to break free from the rigid patterns that had limited their growth. Some embraced the change eagerly, their living armor developing unique asymmetrical patterns that reflected their growing individuality. Others struggled, centuries of engineered perfection fighting against new ways of thinking. 1 year after the failed invasion, Sarah stood again at the observation deck, watching ships arrive. But now they came in peace, human vessels flying alongside Meridian ships that no longer moved in perfect formation. Below, the colony had been rebuilt, stronger than before. The agricultural domes gleamed under the red dwarf sun, but now they incorporated both human and Meridian technology, creating hybrid systems that were neither perfect nor primitive, but uniquely adaptive. "They're calling it the human paradox now," James said, joining her at the window. "The idea that imperfection and adaptability are actually evolutionary advantages. It's revolutionary in Meridian scientific circles." Sarah smiled, watching a group of Meridian younglings learning from human children how to play an imperfect game of hopscotch, their living armor shifting with joy rather than tactical purpose. "We showed them something their perfect simulations never could, that the messiest solutions are often the most brilliant. The story of New Haven's defense became legend among both species, not because humanity had defeated a technologically superior force, but because they had taught that force a fundamental truth: perfection is a dead end. True strength lies in the ability to adapt, to embrace chaos, to find beauty in the imperfect. As Sarah watched the sun set on another day on humanity's first extrasolar colony, she knew they had achieved something far greater than mere survival. They had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their weapons, but in their fundamental nature, their beautiful, chaotic, imperfect humanity. And that was a lesson the perfect Meridians would never forget.